I'm Dr. Greg Popchak, and this is episode 45 of the Beatitudes podcast. We're talking about bringing littles to church. First of all, I just want to say, we also talk about this in the CatholicHOM podcast this week, Lisa and I do, but I want to focus on what the dad's role in kind of making this happen and how you can really step up to help your kids learn to attend at Mass. And, a lot of this really is how we live out the beatitude, blessed are the dads who hunger and thirst for righteousness, because righteousness is really rooted in our pursuit of holiness. It's all about how we maintain our connection to God so that we know what we're worth in God's eyes, that we know what other people are worth in God's eyes, and that we want to live accordingly. And so participating in the sacramental life of the church, receiving that sacramental grace and being able to experience God in those sacraments is key to really understanding our worth in God's eyes and understanding how God wants us to love others. And so that all begins, of course, with participating fully in Mass. And so if we hunger and thirst for righteousness, we want to make sure that we're doing our part to help our children really learn how to attend at Mass, not just attend Mass, but to attend, attention-wise, at Mass and participate fully in the Mass. I want to start by saying that anything we want our kids to do at church has to be practiced at home first. Now, when I say this, sometimes parents think that means that we need to practice Mass at home, right? And I don't mean that exactly. What I do mean, though, is that we need to practice the skills that we want our kids to be able to display at Mass by having them at home. So, for example, parents who expect their kids and who help their kids participate in family meal and stay at the table for the entire family meal, even when they're still very little kids, are going to do much better at Mass than parents who let their kids get down and run around as soon as the kids get a little antsy. And it's perfectly understandable why parents would let their kids get down and run around. No judgment there. But if you want the kids to later on behave well at Mass, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. Now, and I don't mean, by the way, when you're having them sit at the family table, that they have to be, perfectly rigid, sitting at attention and participating in grown-up conversation. It's all about how do we help our kids get through that time. And as a side note, the point of family meals for, say, your kids who are 5 and under isn't really getting them to share the meal, right? It's about getting them to learn to be still for a certain period of time, maybe get some food in, but mainly just engage in quiet activities that don't involve screens, that involve interacting with other people. So they're coloring, they're talking about the pictures they're drawing, they're playing with some quiet activities and sharing with you what they're playing. So it's engaged play with the kids while keeping them at the table, but you're helping them learn to be still and focused and quiet for a particular period of time without screens so that they can learn to do that at Mass. Same thing with reading time. We want to make sure that we're taking time to read with our kids. I think it's really important. Research really shows that when dads are actively involved, kids' vocabulary is much, much better than when just moms are taking the lead with, say, reading and conversation. And that's because moms have a tendency to talk more in baby talk than dads do. It's not universally true, but more often true than not. And because of that, when dads are involved in talking with our kids and reading to our kids, we have a tendency to expect better language, a more mature vocabulary from our kids than moms do. And so that enables them to learn words faster and relate to those big words that are used at church more effectively. And so when we take point in leading reading time with our kids, or maybe having our own reading time with our kids, that's really important. When I say leading reading time, it's not just you sit and read to the child and they sit there perfectly attending. It's you're asking them questions. Maybe you read a sentence or two and ask them to tell you, oh, so what just happened there? Or you read a section of it and say, oh, what do you think about what this character did? Wow, that was a really awful choice. What do you think about that? Getting them to be engaged. So you read a little bit and then you ask them questions about either what happened or what they think about what's happening, and you have a conversation about it. So what's happening there, that does, quote unquote, drag out reading time, but that's the point. right? Because you want to help them learn to attend to longer periods of time. When we just kind of stick the iPad or the phone in front of them, they're not learning how to attend. They're learning how to be distracted, but then they can only be distracted for, the 30-second video or the 1-minute thing. Actually engaging in regular reading time where we're asking them questions and drawing them out helps them learn to be still and be attentive for those longer periods of time, so that when they're at church, this isn't the first time they're having to do it. Another example, talking quietly. If we don't have time at home where we have kind of quiet time, where we have to learn to use our whisper voices for a certain period of the day, maybe as the day is getting to the close, right? Say the hour before it's time before we get to bed. We're going to have a quieter time where we, if any of your lights are on a dimmer switch, you bring the light down a little bit. Maybe you light some candles. Maybe you play some quiet music, and we're all going to practice using our whisper voices, because that's going to help us to calm down and get ready for bed. And even if we're not tired, the point is we're creating a ritual in the home that teaches us that there are times when it's important to be quiet and to use our whisper voices and practice using those whisper voices, so that when they're at church, they know what a whisper voice is and how to use it and why that's important in this space. So teaching the skills that we need to see in our kids begins at home. Not just expecting them to do it because we told them to do it once they get to church. If that's our expectation, it's never going to happen, and we're setting ourselves up for failure. One other point I'd like to make just about this is we want to make sure that we are helping our kids to pay attention at Mass. But the problem with that is that a lot of dads will tell me, but then I don't get to attend Mass at all. I don't get to listen or pay attention, or I'm not being spiritually fed. The time for us to be spiritually fed is not when we're bringing our kids to Sunday Mass. And I think it speaks to a bad habit that a lot of us get into, to expect that Sunday Mass is going to be the complete spiritual meal, right? Once we have kids, our job is to help our kids learn to attend at Mass and pay attention to Mass and get something out of Mass. And we get something sort of as a secondary benefit by seeing it through their eyes and by enjoying the connections that we see them making to the things that are going on. But if we expect them to behave themselves and attend while we're just, in deep contemplative prayer, we're setting ourselves and our kids up for failure. You have to be spiritually fed, but that's going to come by your daily prayer life. That's going to come from you attending, say, a morning Mass on your own, or going to adoration, or those other spiritual disciplines that will nourish you. Once we have children and we're bringing those children to Sunday Mass, the job is really helping them learn how to pay attention and get something out of it. And we benefit in a secondary way by helping them make that connection and by seeing them make those connections. Tying some of this all together, I think one other good thing is in that story time, reading a children's version of the stories that they're going to hear at Mass before they go, and asking them to tell you what those stories mean and really talking through that, creating that reading ritual where they're learning to attend to the stories. They're hearing it in a language that makes sense to them. If you can't find a children's version of the story, then just use the regular missal, but use kids' language for it and help them understand it. Now, what's also fun and helpful is to play a little game with them where you say, okay, this is going to be the word of the week for the first reading. And you pick one word that they might not be so familiar with. And when you hear that word, you touch me on the shoulder and I'll know that you heard it. You're teaching them to listen for certain things. Okay, Lala, what's the word? What's the word for the second reading that we're going to listen to? And before the lector starts reading the second reading, you say, okay, remember, the word for the second reading is such and such. Touch me on the shoulder when you let me know when you got it. And then, when they do, you give them a hug and you ruffle their hair and you smile. Just to show them that you're proud of them for really listening and attending. When another thing to do is to make sure that you're bringing quiet activities for the kids to do. When I say quiet, I mean soft things. appropriate coloring things, preferably with washable markers, washable crayons. Bringing things that are soft and quiet and appropriate. Bonus points if they're religiously themed, right? And we want to keep those activities just for Mass. These shouldn't be things the kids are playing with all week long. Novelty helps kids go a long way to really attending and paying attention. So we have a bag that's just the Mass activity bag. And ideally, it has some, coloring pages for this week's readings. It might have, some Bible plush characters, little finger puppets or whatever that they can play with, or other similar quiet, soft things. Sometimes I see when I say soft, I mean, sometimes I see parents bringing, their 3-year-old's wooden rosary to church, and then the kid just beats the pew the whole time with the rosary, and that's better than, I guess, than beating it with a truck. But still, if you can use soft plush things, that's going to be a lot more quiet and less embarrassing for you. The thing, in getting ready for church, let's not leave that to mom. Let's make sure that our kids know that getting to Mass is important for us, and we need to be playing an active role in helping get the kids ready and out the door, helping them get dressed, helping make sure that they're going through their morning routine and brushing their teeth and combing their hair and getting ready to be at the door at the time that they need to be. Don't just do what a lot of dads do, which is expect mom to make that happen. And, we're sitting there twiddling our thumbs waiting for the kids to be ready, and then we get mad at everybody. Be an active part of making that happen. A big part of being a dad who hungers and thirsts for righteousness is making sure that you are pursuing that right order in your home by really leading that morning routine. Not in a Nazi kind of, we will get ready for church in time kind of way, but in a way that's actually helpful and pleasant. Where you're joking with them, but you're keeping them on task. You're providing the supervision that's necessary to help everybody get out the door when they need to get out the door. And you're praising them for the good job that they did in getting there. So the most important thing to take away from this, though, is that anything you want your kids to do outside the home has to be taught at home first. You need to be seeing them capable of generating those particular behaviors and habits at home in order for them to transfer outside the home. So focus on what you can do to play a role in teaching your kids to attend at the family meals and be part of that process, to attend during reading times, to practice quiet voices at home at specific times, to have quiet activities, where so for example, during that quiet time when we're getting ready for bed, maybe you've talked about a list of 10 or 15 different things that are quiet activities that we reserve for that quiet hour before it's time to get ready for bed. And all the screens go off, other noisy activities go away, and we focus on these quiet time activities. And you're helping the kids do that, by the way. It's not just go be quiet by yourself. It's, let's color together. Let's play with the Play-Doh together, or the wiki sticks, which are just like wax strings that you can make little models out of, and they don't stain anything, and they're fun to work with, and they get soft in your hands. Modeling wax is another good thing like that. You can get that from any online toy store, and again, same thing. It doesn't stain, it doesn't make a mess. It softens in your hands, and it's kind of fun to play with and manipulative that way. So you're taking the point and making these things happen instead of just sort of sitting back and saying, well, it's my wife's job to help the kids do all these things. You want to show that it's important to you, because teaching your children how to connect with God in the sacraments, there's not more could possibly be important for the Father. So as a dad who's really hungering and thirsting for righteousness, make sure that you are taking the lead in preparing your children to do well and attend well at Sunday Mass and other Masses as well, because we can practice, of course, if we have the opportunity to go to daily Mass, we can practice bringing the kids to those shorter daily Masses and really help them practice those skills there. But again, it's got to start by seeing that they can do this stuff at home with the suggestions that I've made. If you have any questions about making this work, don't hesitate to post them to the questions and coaching section of the Catholic Home app. If you're not a member of the Catholic Home community, I invite you to join the Catholic Home app today. Download it it. It's CatholicHOM, stands for Households on Mission, where we can take your questions and respond there, plus get tons of creative resources to help your whole family build a more loving, caring, connected Catholic household on mission. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Beatitudes. Hope to see you over at CatholicHOM as well.